The term commander has evolved beyond just a title. It now symbolizes power, control, and a history of violence that still demands obedience today. This is part of what could be called Biker Logistics 101, a crucial element of Colombia's urban criminal advantage. Motorcycles, the hidden engine of crime in Colombia. To understand how networks associated with the Águilas Negras operate, you need to start with something ordinary: motorcycles. In cities like Bogotá, Cali, and Medellin, the streets are packed with them. Millions of bikes moving through traffic every day. They're cheap, fast, and blend into the noise of city life. For criminal groups, this makes motorcycles the perfect tool for urban operations. They're essential to what experts refer to as last-mile logistics. Roles in the biker network. 1. Couriers. Motorcycle riders can deliver small packets of drugs, cocaine, marijuana, synthetic pills, without attracting attention. They move through neighborhoods disguised as delivery drivers or commuters. 2. Lookouts, spotters. Positioned on bridges or near bus terminals, these riders track police, military movements, or rival gangs. Using cheap phones or radio apps, they report instantly. 3. Debt collectors. Collectors move through crowded neighborhoods, stopping quickly at various locations to demand extortion payments, often from shopkeepers, bus drivers, or small businesses. 4. Micro-trafficking runners. Small drug stashes are constantly moved across cities by bikers. It's a flexible and hard-to-trace system that doesn't require large trucks or central warehouses. 5. Hitmen, sicarios. Perhaps the most feared role. 2 men on a motorcycle, one drives, the other shoots. This two-up assassination method has been used since the 1980s when Pablo Escobar's network pioneered it in Medellin. It's fast, brutal, and nearly impossible to counter in congested urban areas. Why authorities struggle. Police have attempted to counter this system with curfews, registration requirements, and even bans on male passengers. These measures show short-term results, but usually fail. Motorcycles are too deeply embedded in Colombian daily life to be effectively regulated. The Águilas Negras, a brand of fear. The Águilas Negras name keeps appearing across Colombia, but it's not one centralized organization. Rather, it's a label, a mask, used by various criminal groups when it suits them. In rural regions like Catatumbo and Norte de Santander, their name appears in pamphlets during disputes over coca fields or smuggling routes. In areas like Santander and Cesar, the brand has been used for so-called social cleansing threats, targeting sex workers, street vendors, or suspected gang affiliates. In cities like Bogotá or Ibagué, digital messages signed by the Águilas Negras have warned residents to obey curfews or face violent consequences. Local media often reports on the panic these messages cause, yet authorities rarely confirm who is truly behind them. This confusion is part of the strategy: low footprint, high impact. The Águilas Negras don't need armies or convoys to exert control. A few flyers or WhatsApp messages are enough to instill fear. Their brand has become a portable tool of intimidation, filling the power vacuum left by weak state presence. Camouflage for larger criminal organizations. Groups like the Clan del Golfo, AGC, or Los Rastrojos often borrow the Águilas Negras name to issue threats while keeping their true identities hidden. It's a strategy that leverages the existing fear the name carries, without taking direct responsibility. For these groups, the name is logistical cover. It allows them to enforce extortion, control smuggling routes, spread terror without exposure. There is no single chain of command. There is no centralized Águilas Negras hierarchy. The name is a tool used by many different actors, from national cartels to small local gangs. It's camouflage in the criminal underworld, a way to project power without revealing who's really behind the threat. Despite years of government statements claiming the group doesn't exist, the signature keeps reappearing. Why? Because it works. The Venezuelan border, criminal opportunity. Nowhere is the fluid nature of Colombia's underworld more evident than along the Venezuelan border. After paramilitary groups were demobilized, their successors, known as the BACRIM, quickly moved into the area. The border is poorly monitored and full of smuggling routes, dirt roads, rivers, hidden trails. Everything from gasoline to cocaine flows through with minimal oversight. Motorcycles are essential here too. They handle rough terrain better than trucks. They can carry drugs, weapons, or cash across borders in saddlebags or backpacks. Relay networks allow them to cover long distances without drawing attention. Fear as a strategy. In these regions, the Águilas Negras label surfaces on threats and pamphlets that warn locals or mark control over key smuggling points. Whether or not the group exists in a unified form is almost irrelevant. The fear is real, and the name is enough to keep people in line. Motorcycles, short-range mobility, and silent intimidation define this style of low-visibility dominance. The brand adapts wherever there's a gap in authority and keeps the wheels of smuggling turning. The Águilas Negras are not a single organization. They are a strategy, a brand, and a mask, used by multiple groups to maintain control, spread fear, and keep the logistics of the criminal economy running. From city streets to borderlands, one truth remains. Where the government is absent, the bike and the threat it carries fills the void. The enduring threat of the Águilas Negras. The Águilas Negras name hasn't disappeared. In fact, it continues to make headlines. Between 2023 and 2025, Colombian media consistently reported a stream of threats signed with this label. In Bogotá, pamphlets targeted student groups and neighborhood organizers. In Valle del Cauca, community leaders working on land issues received intimidating messages. In Ibagué, local officials and activists were named in viral WhatsApp blasts that sent waves of fear through entire districts. The pattern is always the same, a sudden appearance of pamphlets, often coinciding with political tensions or territorial disputes. Communities fall silent, events are canceled. Human rights organizations issue urgent warnings. Investigations follow, but they rarely lead to a single, traceable command structure. Authorities repeatedly emphasize this point. There is no verified national hierarchy of the Águilas Negras. Instead, investigations reveal small local cells, opportunists, or larger criminal organizations using the name to disguise their actions. But even without a centralized leadership, the impact is the same. Communities take every threat seriously because in Colombia, written warnings have all too often preceded real violence. The brand as a weapon. The persistence of the Águilas Negras brand is not because of a single powerful leader. It's because the name itself has become a weapon. It's a ready-made mask, a tool that any group can use to intimidate. For the communities receiving the threats, the identity behind the message hardly matters. The fear is real, no matter who's wearing the mask. Policy and policing, the motorcycle dilemma. Since motorcycles are a cornerstone of criminal logistics, Colombia's cities have tried to limit their use in violent crime. Measures have included banning male passengers on motorcycles, requiring riders to wear visible identification on vests and helmets. The goal is simple: disrupt the classic two-up setup. One man drives, the other shoots. Homicide data confirms why these restrictions matter. When enforced, motorcycle-related killings decrease. When relaxed or ignored, attacks increase. But this isn't a simple fix. Motorcycles are essential to Colombia's informal economy. They're used by delivery drivers, laborers, street vendors, and countless others who rely on them for survival. That's the challenge. How do you target the criminals without punishing the innocent? Short-lived bans don't work. Criminals just wait them out. Lasting change requires consistent enforcement and public trust. Without both, biker networks continue to operate freely, hidden in plain sight. In cities like Bogota, Cali, and Medellin, motorcycles are both a lifeline and a liability. Policymakers must constantly balance safety and fairness, knowing that every new restriction affects thousands of law-abiding riders. Media coverage, what the public sees. Search for Águilas Negras on YouTube or local news platforms, and the story becomes clear. The media rarely captures cartel leaders or armed compounds. Instead, it shows pamphlets, concerned residents, official statements from the police. Reporters focus on the fear itself, community leaders canceling meetings, parents pulling children from school, businesses closing early, quiet streets, whispered rumors. The Águilas are back. Even though no one can point to a commander, the visual message is powerful. The brand terrifies without ever revealing a face. Meanwhile, global crime documentaries highlight the motorcycle assassin. 2 men, 1 bike, 1 weapon. This image has become a symbol of urban violence across Latin America, and it started in Colombia. In media coverage, the link between pamphlets and violence is this: the masked rider, the bike weaving through traffic, the sudden deadly attack. So even though Águilas Negras has no clear structure, it appears everywhere and nowhere at once. The human cost. Behind the headlines are real people living under constant pressure. Community leaders, teachers, and journalists are common targets. Some are warned to stop their work. Others are forced to flee overnight, leaving families and entire careers behind. In many neighborhoods, a coerced order sets in. Businesses pay extortion fees to operate. Residents follow curfews imposed not by the state, but by whoever signs the latest pamphlet. The fear is even more intense in rural areas, especially for those returning to lands once controlled by paramilitaries. Human rights groups continue to report cases of intimidation against these returnees. They are caught between promises of peace and the reality of threats. Even when no physical violence occurs, the psychological weight of these messages silences communities, displaces families, and damages local economies. This is control without an army. Fear alone is enough. Fighting a phantom, combating the Águilas Negras is not like dismantling a traditional cartel. There is no central chain of command. There is no single leader to capture. The brand is a mask that different actors, small gangs, opportunists, or larger cartels can adopt at will. Analysts argue that the solution lies not in chasing the name, but in dismantling the networks behind it, disrupting extortion economies, tracing and cutting off illicit financial flows, breaking up the motorcycle logistics systems that make threats and violence so mobile. Only by weakening the structures that support this form of invisible power can the brand lose its influence. Otherwise, the name will just keep reappearing, because it's not an organization, it's a symbol that anyone can adopt. The real question. If Águilas Negras is just a mask, the real question is this: can Colombia shift its strategy from chasing names to dismantling the logistics that spread fear? Because as long as the motorcycles keep running and the pamphlets keep appearing, the mask will survive, and communities will continue to live in its shadow.